Welcome back to the Self-Esteem and Confidence Mindset podcast with me, Johnny Pardo. Today, I have a special guest, Laurie, on the show with me, where we're going to be talking about leadership, going to be talking about building teams, confidence, and many, many more. So welcome to the show, Laurie.
Thanks, Johnny. I'm excited to be here with you.
I'm excited you're here with me as well. So I'm looking forward to our conversation today. So Laurie, just a quick introduction, and then we'll go into the conversation. So Laurie is a coach, trainer, and author. She supports leaders all over the world, and she is helping teams build together, and she's looking at always helping people develop. So Laurie, tell us a little bit about how you got into this area of work and maybe a little bit about yourself.
Thanks, Johnny. Yeah, I kind of stumbled into it, honestly. I was working a full-time job. I was a single mom at the time. I was taking classes to fulfill my communications degree, and I was working in a large typewriter company. That dates me, right? And anybody even use typewriters anymore? So I remember, just working my way up through the company. I started on the factory line. I took a lot of different positions just to either advance, or sometimes they were doing downsizing. So it was just to keep my position. And it was probably about 8 years after being there. I think it was a little while that I was offered an opportunity to interview for a product training position. And I remember just loving it, just feeling like, wow, that was so much fun. It was just the energy of it. And then I just transitioned in that company into, I did software training, and then I did soft skills training. And that's when I knew I found my place. I loved soft skills training. And when that company went, literally south, they filed Chapter 11. They had moved their manufacturing to Mexico, and I just said, you know what, I need to just go out and do this. I need to get out there on my own and do this. And I was about to do that when one of the vendors I had worked with asked me to come and manage their training center. And I thought, I'd never sold a service. I'd sold product. That typewriter company actually had me on like Home Shopping Network selling their home products and stuff. So I thought, I need to get some experience doing this. I thought I'd take about a year, and it was about 3 months. And I just said, all right, I got it. I need to just go do this. And so I moved with my daughter, about 3 hours away from where I had lived, so that we could have some population, because I grew up in a really small town, and started networking and, building the business that way. And, a little bit about me personally, and why I think I really gravitate to this work is I'm a middle child of 14, and it's a blended family. And for anybody that remembers the Brady Bunch, I like to say we're the crazy bunch. I mean, it was just like a really chaotic, really dysfunctional family. I can laugh about it now because I'm out of it, right? But it was something I think that drove me, though, to do this work, because I learned through experience that, we've got to take care of ourselves, and we've got to be able to, show up in order to really take care of someone else. So in leadership and in building teams and stuff, it's so critical that we take care of ourselves first. And in our household, we were not taught that. In fact, self-care was selfish. You did not do that. If you tried to talk about your feelings or something, you were whining. It was like, suck it up, Sally. We were not raised that way. And I saw, a lot of collateral damage based on just that pushing and that working so hard and neglecting some of those things that we really need to pay attention to as human beings, quite frankly, but definitely leaders and people in management positions. And in fact, I think of it as, grit is really what, when you think about just the grit, the perseverance, the pushing towards something in that traditional sense. And that's why I came up with that acronym, GRIT, GRIT, generosity, respect, integrity, and truth, because I found that's what was lacking. It's like we need grit for sure, but we need more than that, right? Like we need, if we're just pushing and working so hard toward one thing, we can neglect other things. Early on, when I was working on the factory line, when I had my daughter, I was going to school. At the end of every semester, Johnny, I was sick. It was a pattern. Like I got sick at the end of every semester. And it was because I was neglecting my health. And I was probably neglecting my daughter as well to some degree. I probably could have done a lot better. I don't have regrets. I did the best I could do, but you know what I'm saying? It's like, so that pushing and that tenacity, that toughness is important, but we can't do it at the expense of ourselves and our relationships. And so, that's really, I think, what inspires me to do this work, because when people learn that it's so valuable and it's so beneficial to other people when we take care of ourselves first, you can see the light bulb go off, as it did for me. It was like, wow, this is a whole new world. That limiting belief I used to have, that you have to struggle and really to work hard to make any money. It's like, no, you don't. You don't have to struggle and kill yourself to be successful and make money and climb the corporate ladder if you want to. It's not, it's those limiting beliefs, I think, that really, hold us back more than anything.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for, sharing your experience, and actually interesting to hear that it was taught to you when you were growing up that self-care was selfish. And
Mhm.
yeah, also that's something that can be programmed into us in that way. And also we live in, I'm from the UK, you're from the US. This kind of hustle culture can also very much get programmed into our system as well. And it's like the work, which is, to be honest, I've had to do a lot of work on that. And I still have to call myself out for it sometimes, for the kind of the hard work a little bit. But kind of where I wanted to go with that was, like, particularly you, who works with like various leaders or individuals who are undoubtedly very, very busy people. And it seems like everyone's, super busy these days in general, regardless of where you are, in a business or company. How can we begin to perhaps find that time for ourselves?
Yeah, that's such a great question, because you're absolutely right. We're just super busy. I mean, it's to the point where people are constantly in reaction mode, right? And we're just reacting to so many things. There's also so many things to choose from today,
Hmm.
where it didn't used to be that many years ago, right? We the choices of vacations, the choices of jobs, the choices of now where to work, where to live, all of that. There's just so much. And so it's so important for us to be clear on what we really want. What do we value in life? What's important to us in life? Not just right this moment, but long term as well. And I think about, if I knew then what I know now, I would have done some things differently for sure. I wouldn't have busted my butt to get a 4.0 in a college degree that no one ever asked me what my grade point average was, ever. Not once in my career has anybody ever asked me that question. And so, it's like, why are you killing yourself to do all of these things? Because I at that time did not know how to step back and look at what do I really value? What's really important to me in life? And then set myself up to align my behaviors around that. So I use a framework called high value activities. It's similar to high payoff activities. People use different acronyms and stuff to describe it. And it's in my free resource library that we can put in the show notes, but anybody can get the template for it. And what it does is it helps us to define those areas in our life that are critical to us. So maybe it's health and wellness. Maybe it's spirituality, career, family, friends. It's those areas that are very important to you. And then within those areas, we define 5 to 7 high value activities. And what that means is it's not a specific, like I'm going to say one of my areas is health and wellness. The high value activity is there's going to be 5 to 7 of them. One would be, I'm going to eat and drink healthy every day. It's not going to be as micro as I'm going to make sure I have a green smoothie and cranberry juice, and it's not like that.
At
Why
9:42 in the morning.
Yes, exactly. Why that's important is because it's easier for us to stay focused and remember those core areas and the things that are important to us. And instead of being so tied down to the structure of something, and it helps us to develop those habits easier if we can stay focused on that. So those areas of our life we need to define, and then define what it is within those areas that are important to us. Can I do all 5 or 7 of those healthy activities every single day? Probably not. But guess what? I have them ranked ordered. So I know what the number one thing is. It's to get some good sleep for me. If I don't get good sleep, you won't like me. I'm not very nice. So I know I have to get some good sleep. And then I know that I have to eat something good in the morning because my brain, I need it. I know that, and then the other things on my list are things like meditate, make sure that I exercise, make sure that I do grounding or earthing. And so that's a great example of one that I can't do that every single day. It might be a rainy, stormy day. I'm in North Florida right now. We might have a washout here tomorrow. So I'm not going to be able to get my bare feet on the ground maybe tomorrow. Or when I'm up north, I might have to go touch a tree for a few minutes or something. But it's important that we have some flexibility is what I'm getting at. So if we have these high value activities, and we stay focused on those areas, that's how we're going to make sure that we're doing the things that are important to us in life, and we're not neglecting some of those areas, because we can see all of those areas instead of, like I was doing, just focused on getting the best grades that I could get, in that area. And it's like, okay, that's important, and these other things are important. And can I define, well, what would be important with my daughter, for example? Well, it would be to make sure that I have some very good quality time, that I'm present with her, things like that. So it helps us to define what we want out of life and then align our behavior to get there.
Yeah, I love that. And it's so timely, as I was, doing a bit brainstorming this a bit earlier, about like, right, it's always good to evaluate ourselves and check, we're not just caught on this autopilot mode of life, on habits or activities that aren't necessarily serving us. So I'm really glad you brought that up. So you said the 5 to 7 areas, like, or for example, or activities. Mm-hmm. Is that kind of activities across life, or is it like in each individual part of life?
It's in each individual part of life. So I would have 5 to 7 in my areas of health.
Mm-hmm. Got you.
And again, it doesn't mean that you will do all 5 to 7 every single day, but if life is crazy one day, you'll at least do the top 2 or 3 of those. And so, you'll have the areas of spirituality, for example, or you'll have family, your career, things like that. And then even within, you can take your career or job, and within that, you can build out your areas that are important and your 5 to 7 areas within that. So you can keep cascading this as much as you need to. Typically, most people will go the personal that I shared first, and then just cascade it into their business. I've worked with many leadership teams, and they'll define their high value activities just from a business standpoint. But I encourage them, and sometimes I've done retreats with a few of these companies, that they'll take their people off site and they will go more broad and let them do their personal high value activities and see how it coincides with their professional high value activities.
Sounds fantastic, and we'll definitely link that in the notes there. It sounds like an amazing tool. So sounds like it gives a lot of productivity and I want to say maybe a bit more fulfillment in your life over the kind of just busyness of to do lists. Yeah.
That's exactly it. And we can all keep our days busy. We do. We can fill our days up, but the question is, are we doing what's really important to us short term and long term? Are we creating the life that we really want? And sometimes people are more mindful of that on the personal side. Sometimes they're more mindful of it on a professional side. And I advocate that there is no separation. We need to look at the whole thing and make sure that we're living the life that we want to live, and we're making a difference in the right ways. So if we're in a leadership position and we're working with a team, it's only going to help us and that team if we're very clear on what's important to us, and we are taking care of ourselves in the proper way so that we can show up and really be able to give to that team. And I keep the thought keeps flashing in my head that when your cup is full, you runneth over, right? And that's really what it is. It's like when you're full, when you're happy, when you're content, then you are going to be able to give and be generous to other people in a natural, authentic way.
Mm. And what I also like the sound of this one is it very much sounds like it takes away the need to chase things, like you're waiting for that kind of goal you're trying to hit or kind of next target. And, we're always chasing these things, whilst this is living, what you value each day. You're just like identifying it. And it's much more, feels like a much more empowering way to live not only your life in a professional manner and get your teams to live, but also in your personal life as well. When we're talking about your health, rather than like, I need to hit that certain weight, or back to the professional side again, I need to hit that amount of money, or our business needs to hit that target for revenue this month or this year or this quarter. It's like these more kind of present times of actually living the values and what you want to do. So I love the sound of it.
Yeah, and you nailed it, because it really is like we spend so much time chasing, right? Instead of just living and being in the moment. I say, it's good to set a goal, but then let go, and live and be open and flexible to something else too. Because if we're too steadfast and hard, core on that, then we close the doors to other opportunities. So I think it's a balancing act there. But those high value activities can certainly allow us to be present. I love how you said that, Johnny.
Oh, cool. So I'm glad I was interpreting it in the right way. So yeah, certainly what my takeaway from it. Awesome. So Laurie, can you tell us a little bit more about the grit framework? And I know you've got a whole book based on this idea and that book, but kind of you touched on it briefly. Could you just go through the four main parts to it? And obviously grit, you mean it in another sense, not the typical grit we're talking about.
Sure.
But
like I
it'd
said,
be really great.
Yeah, it takes, like I said, it takes more than grit. So it's not to bash grit. We need grit. We need perseverance, tenacity, and that. But the acronym came about to describe what it will take to be successful and have sustainable grit, without collateral damage, without ruining relationships, without, burning out. And so it's generosity, respect, integrity, and truth. And those four stand solid on their own as great characteristics, traits, things that we need, in our lives. But the real magic comes in when we use it as a kind of a roadmap, and we invert it and start with truth. So it starts with truth, and truth is knowing and accepting ourselves. So it's knowing what we value, what's important to us, our passions, our, what is it that we need to be healthy, to be happy. And it's accepting where we are, being able to look at the good, the bad, the ugly, right? Being able to say, okay, there are some things I want to change in my life. And here's what I'm going to do with that. Setting up my high value activities, that kind of stuff. It's the knowing and the accepting at the truth level. Then we go to integrity, and integrity is the action of our truth. So it's aligning it to our truth. If we say that health and wellness is important to us, and we have the, outlined, and we go home and lay back on the couch and eat Snickers bars and, don't do what we say that is important, then we're not in integrity with what we said is important. And integrity not meaning the unattainable definition of perfection. Quite frankly, I learned from Don Miguel Ruiz of the Four Agreements that we're all perfect just the way we are. It's not about not being perfect, but it's more about doing your best, doing your best to align to that. So it's not that you have to be absolutely perfect. Once we are aligned to our truth and we go to respect is we're already showing respect to ourselves because we know ourselves and we're living in accordance with what we say is important. So that's self-respect right there. We need to take care of ourselves and respect ourselves so that we can respect others. And once we have that level of respect for ourselves, we start to respect others. We start to realize we don't know their truth. We don't know the whole story. We don't, we shouldn't make assumptions. We need to ask questions. We need to respect differences, all of that, and then when we respect other people and ourselves, we start to authentically give. We don't feel like, we know what's important, our truth, we live to it. We respect ourselves and others, then generosity flows naturally. I don't feel like I have to give. I feel like I want to. I want to have that one-on-one meeting with Johnny to help him to see what he can do more of, what he can do less of, give him feedback and stuff. It's not that I feel like I have to. I don't avoid it. It comes from a place of abundance instead of scarcity is really what happens when we abide by the template or the roadmap of grit. So it's generosity, respect, integrity, and truth, but we start with truth and we end up with authentic generosity and grit that's sustainable.
Oh, I love it. Love it. And thanks for explaining the individual parts as well. So yeah, starting with your truth and then generosity rolling, because I guess it's like, I've certainly been there in the past when it's like people are like, oh, be grateful and be generous and stuff like that. And, I've been doing it, but from a place of, particularly when I've been in challenging times, a place of like, oh, okay, I've got to do this, do that. And it's just like this drag. And I'm not like really in a place where I'm giving myself what I need, feeling good. So just reflecting on what you said to past experiences makes complete sense, because I know quite a lot of us just do these tools or these things and then we've not really connected with ourselves first of all.
Oh, it's so true. And you just said it so beautifully that we know the things that we should do and we do them, but without really genuinely feeling it and wanting to do it, right? And sometimes we don't even realize we're stuffing down some resentment, or just we're taking the shirt off our back to give to someone else, but then we're left freezing, right? Like, and we don't have what we need, and we can't sustain that way. You're not going to sustain the grit. There's the generosity is not going to sustain, and that's why people are burning out. And you look at what's happening today, especially over the past couple of years, we've really had an opportunity to look at what's important to us in life. Some of us, I think, took that opportunity, the shutdowns and stuff, and looking, just going, wow, what do I really want out of my life? And it's fascinating to me, really, in a sense that we, here we had this terrible situation, but yet it did allow people to go inside and really see what's important to them and what they want out of life. I've talked to so many people that have expressed this, but I've also, on the other side of the coin, talked to a lot of people that are struggling, leaders, especially with these whole hybrid and remote workforce, and people don't want to come back, right? And so they're like, okay, people are productive at home, but are they truly engaged? Are they working on the most important things? Are they burning out? So there's other issues and problems that are brewing for leaders right now. with this whole advent of being shut down. So I just find it fascinating that there's always like a silver lining, with something that's bad, but and there's always that yin and that yang and things that we have to work on.
Yeah, and it's a good example. The last couple of years when we've been given that opportunity to reflect on what we want a little bit, and I know it's an uncomfortable feeling sometimes at first, isn't it? But actually,
Yeah.
when you go through it, can be quite a empowering kind of situation. And yeah, it's not an easy question to answer, even though it sounds very simple. What do I want? And that's one of our first rules of neuroencoding, actually. What do you want? And it's a question people struggle with, or they'll answer with what they don't want. So
Yeah.
and
And
that's not the
and,
question.
and sometimes when I have somebody that's struggling with that, I'll say, well, how do you want to feel?
Hmm.
What is the feeling that you want? And sometimes that will open them up and they'll start to go, well, I want to feel accomplished. I don't want to feel like I have so much on my plate that I can't ever get it done. I want to feel like I'm growing and learning, but not, stressed out and always chasing something. So, so sometimes getting to that goal of what do you want to feel, can help them to get down to what do you want?
Yeah. Oh, that's a great question. How do you want to feel? The emotions. It's often, yeah, because often we can, like, visualization work I've been doing, going into that side of things. You sometimes used to just visualize, like, okay, see the object, see that thing, I'm doing that without any feeling. And it's when you bring in the feelings, it's just super effective, and we forget about our
Yeah.
emotions. It's like, well, I want this amount in my job, or this amount in my business, I want this home, I want that. And it's like, but what are the emotions you want to experience? I know obviously you've done a bit of Tony work, and that's one of the things
Yes.
he teaches on his personal power. I think it's like, what are the 5 emotions you're committed to feeling? And it's just like,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And it gets right down to your why too, right? Like, why do you want that in your business? Why do you want that? Like, what does it
Mm,
mean to you? How will you feel? What does it mean to you? And just going a little deeper, I think can really help people to find that motivation and discipline that they need to show up every day the way that they want to see themselves show up. So many leaders and managers that I work with, and most of the time I work with them in groups and in classes, but sometimes I do take on coaching clients. Right now I'm full, but I think I'm about to have 2 openings next month. But so I do less of that. I do more classroom training, but I'll hear them say, like, how they're struggling with things like that, and it's just uh, to help them to break through that and see that they can make a difference. I guess it's just the light bulb goes off and you see that they get it, and they can make a change in their lives. And yeah, that's I guess that's the why for me right there.
make the change. Yeah, that's a great why. In leadership, obviously, in particular, it's obviously very demanding, and you've got teams to manage, and you're always growing yourself as an individual. Obviously growth is great, but it can be hard at times, very hard, and we have to level up. And it's something I've definitely experienced in myself. It's something I see people come to me for with their, like, confidence coaching. It's, I'm growing and I'm having all these having these insecurities, and I'm like, well, it's kind of a good side in a way, because you're growing, but obviously that, we're having to work on that. So my kind of question from this was vulnerability, or kind of being okay with kind of sharing how you're feeling. Do you find this sometimes is a challenge in leadership, that they're perhaps not willing to be a bit more open about how they're feeling? And how do you kind of get someone to open up a little bit more, or for themselves to start doing it?
Yeah. Yeah. And I can't help but tie that right back to what I was saying, how I was raised and stuff. To share your vulnerabilities was a weakness. It was not not acceptable kind of thing. It was whining or whatever. And I run into this a lot in leadership positions. And some of it is that underlying thought that you need to be stronger than that. And you don't want to show weakness because that's, you're supposed to be the strongest and know it all. And, but what they don't realize is that puts people off. People don't connect to you. They at some level don't believe it anyway. They know you have some flaws just like they do, but you're not sharing that in some way. So in a classroom setting, we work on that as part of a trust exercise so that people understand it's a little different than predictive trust, which is important. We can predict your behavior. I've known you for so long. I know that you're going to be late or early or this or that, that predictive behavior, predictive trust. But vulnerability-based trust is working on sharing those things so that people can connect with you and feel that you care, you're human. It's okay that you make a mistake. And so when leaders understand the value of it, why it's important, then they tend to open up and are more apt to do it. If you just tell them, oh, you should be more vulnerable with your team, they're not going to buy into that. It's like, no, that doesn't make sense to them logically in their minds until they dig deeper and realize that to share something is a learning. It's a way to help somebody else learn something. It's a way to connect with them. Most of the time, we'll work on exercises to help them to share a vulnerability. And you know what I learned from that, and share what they learned from that so that they can take people on a journey and see how they went from here to there. And that's really powerful because people love story, and it's no difference in the workplace. If it's a true story that a manager can tell you about the way he learned something or what he did, and there's a reason behind it to help somebody else, that's when sharing your vulnerabilities is powerful. And so I think people shy away from it because they don't really know how to use it or why it's important to do that with your teams and to help people to understand you and connect with you and be more open. Because, if you think about it, we'll be guarded and we won't share. Maybe I made a mistake and I'm going to be hesitant to share it with my boss who has never shown a flaw ever. So I'm going to be like, oh gosh, I better not ever bring this up and be more apt to hide it. But if that boss, that manager, that leader shares vulnerabilities, is open, is transparent, then we're going to be more apt to go, oh, I messed up. Can you show me, a way to do this? Or I learned this, or it's going to be a much more open environment. I'm going to be more apt to share my opinions. Maybe I disagree with what's going on. Maybe I can see something that should be done better. I won't share that if I don't feel safe to do that. So the sharing vulnerabilities creates that psychological safety too, where people can step into being themselves and being able to share something that might be valuable for the team that would otherwise be left unsaid.
Yeah, love what you said about the connection with you can build from it as well, and be able to really connect with your employees a bit more if you're the leader as well.
Yeah.
And I guess things like self-doubt kind of may pop up a few times in the area you work with kind of like leaders. Just because it's kind of something that most people say they struggle with, and I'm always keen to demonstrate that sometimes these confident leaders, these charismatic people who appear like that on the outside, we can all have those insecurities and doubts from time to time. No one's away from those kind of fears. No one's excluded.
It's so true. And when we shine light on it, it dissipates it, right? Like when instead of trying to hide it and keep it covered, if we have those doubts, if we have those, those fears and those feelings, sometimes they might not be appropriate to share with your team, and maybe you need to share it with your coach, and you need to share, or a group that you belong to. I used to belong to an entrepreneur organization group, and it was great. That's where I would share some of those type things where it wasn't appropriate to share it with my team. Just realizing that we all have them, like you said, we have self-doubts, we have fears. I including myself, and every single person I've coached over the last 25 years, I haven't met anyone that hasn't had it. So it's part of being human. It's the ability to be able to first accept it. That's truth. It's like it's okay. It's okay that we have those. That makes us human. There'd be something wrong with us if we didn't have some self-doubts or some fears along the way. And we're constantly growing and learning. And when we are transparent and vulnerable, we can shed light on that, and it kind of just helps it go away. Just the act of putting it out there can help, take that away. Now, I did just post on LinkedIn today about my fear of spiders, Johnny, and I got to tell you that I haven't been able to get over that one yet, but
Okay.
And I seriously have been saying on the comments this morning, like, please, somebody help me over my fear of spiders, because I don't like the fact that I didn't want to get back in my car, and I was creeped out for the rest of the day over a big spider in my car.
Oh, no. Oh, well, yeah, thank you for sharing that vulnerability with us. Appreciate it. Yeah, no, that's true. And I like what you said about, sometimes, I think it's just good to make it kind of clear or get people thinking about it, that, it's good to be vulnerable and open, but there is kind of a right time and right place, like thinking, I'm not a good enough leader or manager for this team. Maybe that's not great to share in front of the whole team, but yeah, if they're working with yourself, it's good to get it out in one form or another. And I kind of see this with kind of like coaches in general, kind of sharing like, I'm really struggling at the moment going through this. And I'm like constantly, and you kind of thinking, well, if I was someone struggling with that, I'm not sure I'd necessarily want to be coached by you right now, because you're going through this. But sharing it with like their own coach and stuff like that is good. But yeah, it's vulnerability is a key thing to share and get out. But yeah, just be using common sense on where you're sharing it.
And being mindful of the purpose of it, right? Like, why am I sharing it right now? If it's just to get it off your chest, use your coach, your therapist, your best friend, someone else. If it's to help them in some way, to help your team in some way. And one thing that I neglected to say is past, like lessons, past vulnerability, the vulnerability from the past to share the lesson is appropriate to share with your team, not so much like, the current kind of vulnerability that you're having, because they're looking for you, to you for confidence as well as being human. So you're balancing that confidence and humility and humanity, and you're leading those people. So that is important to keep that in mind. So there's always a purpose or a reason behind sharing that vulnerability. It's not just to share it like you would with a friend. Yeah,
absolutely. Thank you, Laurie. So a couple of questions really to kind of finish off. Great conversation today. Is one of them, I just wondered, from like leaders you've worked with a variety of leaders. We've all got like different challenges. From perhaps some leaders who possess that really good leadership to their teams, they've got their teams integrated, making the teams feel good, but they're also on the personal side feeling good. Are there maybe like 2 or 3 traits you've noticed from those kind of leaders that perhaps we can learn from?
Oh, that's such a great question. Yeah, I think one of the traits is going back to grit and really knowing themselves and being secure in their own skin and being okay with some of their strengths, their limitations, and being, not afraid to just be who they are. That authenticity, it's so attractive, whether it's in, a leader, whether it's in a significant other or a friend, that just really being yourself. I think that's one huge trait. Another one is kind of what I touched on just a few minutes ago, that balance of confidence and humility, being able to step in and be confident and make those decisions when you need to, hold people accountable when it has to be done. And at the same time, that level of humbleness and humanity, in that you're not doing it to be a jerk, you're doing it very mindfully, so you can kill them with kindness, so to speak, right? You can be nice when you're doing that in a genuine way, but it doesn't have to be, nasty. You don't lose it, so to speak. So the confidence and humility side, and then caring, like genuinely caring about other people. The leaders that I've worked with that have been the most successful, I would say, definitely, hands down, really care about people. They're not as concerned with the position they're in and the money they're making. Not to say that that's not important to them, but that's not the number one thing that's important to them. They really do want to develop other people. They want to help other people. They want to clear roadblocks and see those people succeed. And it's coming from their heart, not, just because they think that they have to do that.
Love it. Yeah, great point. Great points and great tips to share there that we can all use regardless of where we are in our business or our personal lives. So thank you for sharing those traits.
And Johnny, I think of leadership really as an activity more than a position, related to what you just said. So anyone can stand up and lead. Anyone at any time can decide to act as a leader. And that's, doing all the things that we just talked about, knowing yourself, being true to yourself, helping other people to believe in themselves, respecting them, giving to other people, looking to help them grow, finding a moment when the truth needs to be said. Everyone else is afraid to say it. Those are moments that anyone can stand up and lead.
Yeah. No, brilliant. So Laurie, been great having you on today, and really enjoyed our conversation. Where can people find you if they want to find out more about your work? And obviously you mentioned the framework earlier as well.
Yeah, so I'll give you 3 areas. One is LinkedIn, and you can find me Laurie Sudbrink, LaurieSudbrink. We'll probably put the link in the show notes, right? The other is what I had mentioned, the resource library. So we'll put the link in that as well. But for anybody that, auditory, lauriesudbrink.com, and it's resource-library. So you can get right in there and get your free resources, including the high value activities template. And I'd love to offer for your listeners, Johnny, my free grit assessment. So we'll send that link as well. It's an electronic assessment, and it helps them to see where they are in generosity, respect, integrity, and truth. And they'll get the results sent to them. It's a self-awareness assessment just for their own pleasure. And then Leading with Grit can be found on Amazon if anybody's interested in the book.
Awesome. Fantastic. Well, thank you for coming onto the show, Laurie, and sharing us lots and lots of wisdom and great points for improving ourselves. So thank you, Laurie.
Oh, it was a pleasure to talk with somebody across the pond. Thanks, Johnny.
I love that phrase. Yeah, absolutely. So that concludes our episode for today. And remember, work on your self-confidence every single day.